What's up, everybody? Let's get back into some more Malifaux lore. And this week, we're going to be talking about Lord Cooper of the Explorer Society. So spoilers incoming for all of Lord Cooper's stories, and check the description below to find a list of those stories so you can check them out for yourself. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That helps get these videos in front of more people and make more Malifaux fans. And with that, let's get into Lord Cooper. Lord Justin Cooper was born into the low end of high society. Though his father had money, he was very frugal, fearing that he might spoil his son. The only expense he was willing to splurge on was the hunt. Lord Cooper rebelled against this, always wanting to return to high society rather than be out in the wilderness. Eventually, his father decided to disown him until he could prove himself. Left out on his own, he sought out his father's huntsmen, and they agreed to train him in survival. The first time he was left to fend for himself, forced to kill or be killed, Lord Cooper had an awakening inside him. He soon became a prolific hunter, and eventually he got bored of the creatures of Earth and decided to go to Malifaux. There, he founded the Explorer Society, on its face an organization that promoted science and discovery, but in reality, profiting from exploitation and plundering of the land. At Lord Cooper's birthday, one of his manservants, Poultice, gifts him 2 puppies. Lord Cooper is pleased as he looks around at all of his guests, well-to-do people and members of high society in Malifaux, the types of people he associates with as the head of the Explorer Society. A messenger steps forward with a box and says it's from an Earl from Earth, who sends his well wishes. There are murmurs in the crowd as the onlookers recognize the man's name as a powerful industrialist who allegedly knows the king. Cooper opens the box to find a high-caliber hunting rifle and thanks the messenger and tells him to invite the Earl to his estate for a hunt. He sees one of his associates, Fitzroyce, who seems to be particularly pleased with the weapon. When Cooper asks why, the man says that his gift comes at an excellent time because he has a gift as well. Knowing the man's reputation, Cooper asks him if he has organized a hunt. Fitzroyce tells him they're going to the quarantine zone. When they arrive, they find an empty cage with several dead attendants lying on the ground. Fitzroyce apologizes, explaining that the beast must have gotten away, but Cooper says on the contrary, this will only add to the excitement. He starts looking for tracks, and finds paw prints like that of a bear, but much larger. A short way away, they find a huge slate ridge mauler feasting on the torso of one of the attendants. Cooper remarks that he's tremendous, and begins stalking the beast. As he levels his rifle, the mauler notices him, and begins to charge. He holds his breath, waiting till the creature gets closer, and then pulls the trigger. But there's a click, and then nothing. As the mauler attacks him, the sound of screaming almost drowns out the sound of crunching bones. Cooper isn't sure how much time has passed. He's aware of people around him and voices, and an intense feeling of pain. Soon his senses start to return to him, and he sees Fitzroyce at his bedside and asks him for water. The man tells him he's been out for 8 days, and Cooper inquires about the rifle. Fitzroyce explains that it was not a misfire, but the rifle was sabotaged, and when Cooper insists he continue, the man explains that they investigated and found the messenger who delivered it. After an interrogation, they discovered that the messenger was an imposter who intercepted the real messenger and sabotaged the rifle. He says that they even got the name of his employer. But before he can go on, Cooper says Marcus. Lord Cooper had expected this, as ever since he'd come to Malifaux, there were rumors that the Beastmaster did not approve of his activities, and that he might be a threat. He asks what the damage is, and Fitzroyce says that he lost several limbs to gangrene after severe breaks, and that they had to put a metal plate in his skull and replace some of his organs. Cooper is suddenly aware of how empty the bed feels, and he realizes that this could be the end for his way of life. He asks Fitzroyce to leave him. In the next few days, his mood only worsens, as he realizes the extent of his new limitations. Something Fitzroyce said about the plate in his head lingers in the back of his mind, until he has a realization and calls in his most trusted companions. He tells him that it's clear his limbs will not be growing back, and he must seek outside assistance. His skull could be replaced with metal, so why not the rest of him? Poultice exclaims that Victor Ramos might be able to help him, but Cooper cuts him off, and tells him that he won't let Ramos have him clanking and steaming around like a boiling kettle. Fitzroyce tells him that he might know someone better, but he'll be difficult to convince. Lord Cooper replies that money is no object. While he waits for the man to be summoned, Cooper calls upon Gretchen Janis. When she arrives, she apologizes for not visiting sooner, as she was out on an expedition. Cooper tells her that in his condition, he will not be able to lead the Explorer Society, and that he wants her to do it in his place. She says that surely once he is better, he can continue his duties, but Cooper tells her his interests have diverged from the Explorer Society lately, and that she would do a better job leading them to push back the veil of the unknown. Janis humbly accepts his offer. Fitzroyce brings an artisan to Cooper by the name of Campagnolo. He is the man responsible for the dancing constructs of the Star Theater, known as the Choreography. Cooper asks the man if he would be willing to accept a commission, and the man replies that he knows Cooper and suspects that he does not merely want replacement limbs, but he wants to be able to use them just like his old body, or perhaps better. Cooper nods, and the man explains that to do that will be a significant undertaking. Cooper tells him that he can name his price, and the man says that it's not only the price, but it will take time and considerable effort from both of them, but that he thinks he'll be able to make him better than he was. Over the next few months, progress is painfully slow. The man converts a library into a laboratory and starts importing equipment and materials. Soon they begin a series of surgeries to improve Cooper's overall health and to augment some of his damaged organs. His only joy comes from his dogs, who are growing quickly and becoming quite smart as a result of the expert trainers Cooper hired. After 2 years, Campagnolo finally brings him a prototype leg, and it takes some time for Cooper to be able to move it with his mind. He tries to walk but falls flat on his face, but after some practice, he gets better, and the man starts bringing him improved versions of the leg to work with. Eventually, he's able to walk on his own. After that, they begin testing arms, and after several iterations, he feels he may be able to hold a rifle again. He decides to practice with a relatively small rifle, and is surprised when he feels no recoil against his new metal limbs. He starts picking off targets quickly, until he decides that he needs to try a bigger gun. He gets a rifle designed to fell bison, and fires a dozen shots without missing. A weapon that used to cause aches and bruises is now no problem at all. Cooper tells Fitzroyce that he wants to try a moving target, and the man tells him he thinks he can find a stag. But Cooper objects, and says he already has antlers, and he wants something more cunning. Fitzroyce jokes that he could ask the man who's been stealing from his mother-in-law, and Cooper tells him to offer 2,000 scrip. Fitzroyce stammers a question in confusion, and Cooper says that he'll place a bounty, and he'll have one shot. If he misses or the man gets away, he can keep the 2,000 scrip, but he wants an answer by tomorrow. It turns out the man was not fast enough. Cooper was intrigued by the process and organizes a few more of these excursions. Malifaux, as it turns out, is full of desperate people willing to risk their lives for a chance to make it better. Poultice starts calling these people runaways. Cooper remarks to Campagnolo that this new body is much better than his old, but he adds that he needs a better weapon that is suitable for his new strength. Campagnolo tells him that he anticipated this, and hands him a huge cannon of a rifle chambered in 950 Nitro Express. Cooper is pleased and goes to test it immediately. He decides to go on safari in India and Africa to test himself on something familiar so he can get an accurate comparison. He takes down his prey with ease, and with a stamina that he finds can only be matched by his dogs. And yet, he finds it all strangely unfulfilling. He returns to Malifaux to hunt maulers, hoping that killing the beast that did this to him would give him satisfaction. He takes down several, and then kills one with a knife. And while all his men are impressed, he is still disappointed. Men are cunning but weak. Beasts lack guile. He needs more dangerous game. Campagnolo soon summons him back to his estate. When he arrives, he sees a metal figure standing in the corridor. Campagnolo explains that he found himself with many spare parts from previous iterations of Cooper's new limbs, so he decided to use them. Cooper is currently using the 10th iteration of the limbs, so this construct is called Model 9. The machine steps forward gracefully, and Campagnolo explains that it will be unwaveringly loyal, and that's something that might suit a person like Cooper. As Lord Cooper thanks him, Fitzroyce approaches with a smile on his face and tells him that he has good news. They found her. Cooper and his posse enter the forest and search until they find Miranda, Marcus's mate, lounging near a riverbank. Cooper lines up a shot, and just as he pulls the trigger, the woman jumps, and the shot misses. His trackers swarm the area looking for her footprints, but Cooper knows they won't find any, as he saw the woman transform into an aquatic creature just as she jumped. He knows that they won't find Marcus unless he wants to be found, but that he may be persuaded to come find them if Cooper had something that he wanted, like his woman. 2 days later, they pick up Miranda's trail again, and follow deer prints, and then fox prints, until they become human again. They finally corner her, and as Cooper is preparing, Poultice decides to charge in, and finds himself facing a razor spine rattler. She gets away, and they bury Poultice. They keep tracking Miranda for weeks, and finally lose her trail. Cooper suspects she may have turned into a bird, and he also notices that she seems to be staying transformed for less and less time. As they work to pick up her trail again, Cooper realizes that he's starting to feel alive again, for the first time since the accident. After much more effort, Fitzroyce finally reports that they have Miranda trapped in a gully that is overlooked by ridges on each side. Cooper orders him to spread the men out on both sides so they can flush her out. He suspects that something may be up, as he has learned a lot about Miranda, and knows that she is more clever than to let herself be cornered. He tells Fitzroyce to keep the dogs back, as he senses a trap, and he will not suffer any harm to come to them. As they head down into the gully, he feels uncertain. He notices that they've unintentionally corralled themselves, and senses danger. He orders his men to start heading back, when suddenly they hear a loud screech. Fitzroyce asks what that was, and Cooper replies, a dinner bell. A huge creature suddenly bursts out of the vegetation and surveys its surroundings, as Cooper notices a small bird transform into a mouse and scurry away. As he stares at the Mallosaurus Rex, he finds himself frozen in indecision. He admires how cleverly Miranda has sprung her trap, but he also knows that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and this monster's skull would look great on his walls. As the creature begins to charge, he fires a bullet at it, but the huge round has little effect. Everyone else opens fire, as the creature snaps its jaws and whips its tail. Model 9 slashes at its face, distracting it from Cooper, giving him a chance to reload. The monster eats one of his huntsmen, and they keep firing at it, their bullets penetrating its skin, but not making it through its tough bones. Cooper gets an idea and orders Model 9 to make it face him. As the beast turns to chase the construct, Cooper shoots it in its ankle. The Malifaux tries to step on the injured limb, but falls to the ground, and Cooper runs up to it, steps on its muzzle, puts the rifle against its head, and fires point blank. The bullet pierces its skull, and with one last convulsion, it dies. As the men start preparing to process the beast's carcass, Cooper returns to his dogs. After a few moments, Fitzroyce approaches carrying a huge egg and tells him that they found a nest. He asks if Cooper would like an omelet, and then considers it and says that it would be crazy to see one of these hatched, and Cooper could keep it as a pet. He laughs, intending it as a joke, but when he looks at Cooper's expression, his smile disappears. During a party at the Explorer Society's mansion, Lord Cooper attends a meeting with the other leaders of the organization. He meets with English Ivan and Anya, and soon Gretchen Janice arrives. They all greet her, and Lord Cooper complains about having to spend his time dealing with politics. Janice offers to address his business first, and then explains that their scientific expeditions have been encountering more and more dangerous flora and fauna, and they need Cooper to start collecting samples. Lord Cooper pauses, and then makes a comment critical of Anya, one of the newer members of the group. There's an awkward silence, and the woman seethes, before Cooper laughs out loud, and tells Gretchen that he likes the cut of Anya's jib. He asks one of Gretchen's attendants to send the information about these dangerous creatures to his man Fitzroyce, and the attendant tells him that they need him to sign off on some expense sheets before he leaves. Lord Cooper starts signing the paperwork, but after a few documents he throws his pen down and tells the man that if he gives him one more paper to sign, he'll have his head on the wall. He announces to the group that the next Explorer Society event will be on him, as that's preferable to having to fill out more paperwork. He reiterates that he'll be expecting the information about the creatures, and as he stands up to walk away, Anya asks him curiously what kind of creatures he hunts. He turns and tells her that maybe one day he'll take her along, and then he calls to his dogs and leaves. Every time Lord Cooper and his retinue set foot in the wildlands, they are set upon almost immediately by beasts. He starts to realize how Marcus is doing it, his chimera tracking the outsiders by their smell. Cooper respects Marcus for this, and decides he'll have to play by the Beastmaster's rules. He starts going on expeditions with fewer people, instead bringing beasts of his own, and he brings less equipment, even trading in his hunting rifle for a bow. This proves effective, as he attracts far less attention, and he finds the challenge of these new hunts exciting, and he can't wait for he and his animals to sink their claws into the so-called Beastmaster. Well, that's it for Lord Cooper. It's interesting how his story spans most of the history of Malifaux, but there's a good reason why he was sort of behind the scenes most of the time. I'm looking forward to seeing them flesh out his story a little bit, and I especially can't wait for the showdown with him and Marcus. It has to be coming, so I gotta know. Everybody drop a comment below and let me know who wins in a fight, Marcus or Lord Cooper. I already know who my money's on, but I'm curious what everybody else thinks. While you're down there, let me know who you want to see me do a video on next. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with some friends, and thanks for watching.